I drove 300 miles to surprise my son on his 30th birthday with a Louisville Slugger, the same bat he'd dreamed about as a kid. When I knocked on the door of the house I built with my own hands, silence. Then I peered through the window, and my blood ran cold. The entire house was stripped bare. Every photo, every piece of furniture, every trace that my family had ever existed, gone. That's when my neighbor came running across the yard, screaming words that would shatter everything I thought I knew about the son I raised. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comment what time is it where you're watching this. The asphalt stretched endlessly ahead of me, shimmering like liquid mercury under the brutal Texas sun. I gripped the steering wheel of my old Ford pickup tighter, my knuckles white against the cracked leather. Highway 35 had never felt this long, not even during those emergency runs to the hospital when Susan was sick. 8 months. 8 months since I'd heard my boy's voice. The radio crackled with some country song, but I switched it off. The silence felt heavier, more honest. Through my windshield, I watched the familiar landmarks blur past. The old Dairy Queen, where we'd celebrated every report card. The abandoned gas station, where I'd taught him to change a tire on his 16th birthday. My chest tightened as I passed the high school stadium. Those Friday nights felt like yesterday. Me in the bleachers, watching my son sprint across that field in his royal blue jersey, number 23. After every touchdown, he'd search the crowd until he found me, then point straight at the sky. For Mom, he'd mouth, even though Susan was already gone by then. The gift box beside me shifted as I took the turn onto Maple Street. Inside was that Louisville Slugger, the exact replica of Mickey Mantle's bat he'd begged for as a kid. I'd driven clear to Arlington to find the right one, spent 3 paychecks I couldn't afford. But God, the look on his face Christmas morning when he unwrapped it, like I'd handed him the moon itself. Dad, is this really real? He'd whispered, running his small fingers along the smooth wood. Real as Texas sunshine, son. Now, pulling into the driveway of the house I'd built with my own hands, everything felt different. Wrong. The tire swing I'd hung from the oak tree swayed in the still air, but there was no laughter echoing from the backyard. No smell of barbecue drifting from the patio where we used to flip burgers every Sunday after church. The white clapboard siding looked exactly the same. Paint slightly faded, shutters still that deep forest green Susan had insisted on. But the windows stared back at me like empty eyes. No warm glow from the living room lamp. No flicker of the television we'd watched countless Rangers games on. I sat there for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled, breathing in the scent of Mrs. Patterson's honeysuckle climbing the fence. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A lawnmower hummed. Normal neighborhood, sounds that made the silence from inside my own house feel even more hollow. This was supposed to be different. Today was his 30th birthday, the day I swallowed my pride and came home to fix what we'd broken. The day we'd finally talk about that awful phone call after Susan's funeral, when grief and stubbornness had driven words between us like nails into wood. I stood there on the front walkway, staring at the house that had been my world for 23 years. The red brick steps I'd laid myself when my boy was 12 still looked solid, but somehow they felt like they belonged to someone else's memory now. The honeysuckle Mrs. Patterson had planted decades ago had grown wild along our shared fence, its sweet fragrance thick in the humid air. I breathed it in deep, that same smell that used to drift through our kitchen window during summer mornings while Susan made pancakes and our son practiced his pitching form in the backyard. But today, that sweetness felt cloying. Wrong. I walked up those familiar steps, each one groaning under my weight. The third board from the left let out that sharp creak it had been making for years, the one I'd always meant to fix but never got around to. Susan used to say it was our built-in security system. "Nobody's sneaking up on this porch, George," she'd laugh. Now that creak sounded like a warning. The front door's brass knocker was tarnished green, hanging slightly crooked the way it had since the day we moved in. I raised my fist and knocked. 3 solid raps that echoed inside like gunshots in a canyon. The sound bounced back hollow, empty, with none of the warm absorption that comes from a house filled with furniture and life. Silence. I knocked again, harder this time. Son? You in there? Nothing. Not even the shuffle of footsteps or the creak of floorboards. Just that awful, suffocating quiet that seemed to press against my eardrums. I cupped my hands around my eyes and peered through the living room window. The late afternoon sun slanted through the glass, illuminating dust motes dancing in empty air. Where our old leather couch used to sit, the one we'd bought secondhand when money was tight, there was nothing but carpet indentations, perfect rectangles pressed into the beige fibers like ghosts of furniture. The mantel above the fireplace was bare. No family photos. No trophies from his high school football days. No Christmas stockings hanging from the hooks I'd screwed into the wood myself. Even the old ship in a bottle my grandfather had given me, the one that had sat on that mantel for 15 years, was gone. It was like someone had taken an eraser to our entire family history. I moved to the side window, the one that looked into the kitchen. Empty countertops. No coffee maker. No dish towels hanging from the oven handle. The refrigerator was gone, leaving only a darker square of linoleum where it used to stand. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't just my son being out for the afternoon. This wasn't him running errands or visiting friends. Someone had cleaned out this house. Completely. Deliberately. The honeysuckle's perfume turned sour in my nostrils as a cold realization crept up my spine. Whatever had happened here, whatever had driven my boy away from the only home he'd ever known, it wasn't good. And I was about to find out just how bad it really was. I walked back to my truck, my boots heavy on the gravel driveway. The gift sat there on the passenger seat, wrapped in blue paper with a silver bow, the same colors as his old high school jersey. I'd spent an hour at Walmart yesterday, standing in the wrapping paper aisle like a fool, trying to remember which colors meant the most to him. The Louisville Slugger felt solid in my hands as I lifted it out. 34 inches of ash wood, perfectly balanced, with that distinctive red label running down the barrel. Mickey Mantle's signature model, the exact same bat that had started it all. I could still see him, 10 years old, standing in the sporting goods store in Dallas, his nose pressed against the glass display case. His breath had fogged up the window as he whispered, "Dad, that's the one Mickey Mantle used. The real one. Son, that bat costs more than our grocery money for a month." But the look in his eyes, God, the pure longing in those brown eyes that matched his mother's. I'd worked double shifts at the construction site for 3 weeks straight, coming home with sawdust in my hair and concrete under my fingernails. Susan never said a word about the extra hours, just packed my lunch a little bigger and kissed me goodbye in the dark. Christmas morning, 1994. He'd torn through the wrapping paper like a tornado, tossing aside socks and school supplies until he got to the long, thin package leaning against the tree. When he saw what it was, he went completely still. Then he looked up at me with tears streaming down his cheeks. "Is it really real, Dad?" "Real as Texas sunshine, son." He'd slept with that bat beside his bed for months. Took it to Little League practice every Saturday, even though the league made him use aluminum. Said it was for inspiration and proper form. Smart kid. Always was smarter than his old man. Now, standing in front of this empty house with another Louisville Slugger in my hands, I wondered if I was a fool for thinking wood and memories could bridge 8 months of silence. 8 months of stubborn pride on both sides. 8 months since that phone call when I'd said things I couldn't take back. "You never understood me, Dad. You never even tried." Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd failed him in ways I was too blind to see. But today was his 30th birthday, and I'd driven 300 miles with this bat, and a heart full of apologies I'd been rehearsing for weeks. I looked up at the empty windows of our house, clutching his gift against my chest. "I'm trying to understand now, son," I whispered to the silence. "I'm here. I'm finally here." But the house just stared back at me, hollow and waiting, like it was holding secrets I wasn't ready to learn. I pressed my face harder against the living room window, my breath fogging the glass as the reality of what I was seeing sank in. The afternoon light streaming through the bare windows illuminated nothing but emptiness, a hollowed-out shell of the home where I'd raised my boy. The hardwood floors I'd installed myself gleamed with fresh polish, but they looked wrong without furniture scuff marks and the worn paths where we used to walk. In the far corner, where our old piano used to sit, the upright Baldwin that Susan had inherited from her mother, there was nothing but a faint outline in the dust and 4 perfect indentations in the wood. I remembered the day we'd moved that piano in. Took 6 guys from the construction crew and half a case of beer to wrestle it through the front door. My son was 8 then, fascinated by the way the keys made different sounds when he pressed them. Susan had been so excited to teach him chopsticks, and Mary had a little lamb. "Every home needs music, George," she'd said, running her fingers across the keys. "Music makes a house feel alive." Now the silence was deafening. I moved along the porch to get a better angle, peering deeper into the room. The stone fireplace still dominated the far wall, the one I'd built stone by stone during the summer of '98, while my boy handed me tools and asked 1,000 questions about mortar and levels. But the mantel was stripped bare. No family photos. No his high school graduation picture in that cheap wooden frame. No the ceramic handprints he'd made in 3rd grade art class. Even the built-in bookshelves on either side of the fireplace were empty. Not a single book remained. Not his collection of Hardy Boys mysteries. Not Susan's romance novels with their cracked spines. Not even the leather-bound Bible her father had given us as a wedding gift. It was like someone had taken an eraser to 23 years of living. I tried the front door handle. Locked. Walked around to the back patio, where the sliding glass door used to stick something awful until you learned the trick of lifting it just right while pulling. Also locked, but I could see straight through the kitchen into the dining room. The kitchen island where Susan used to roll out biscuit dough every Sunday morning was gone. The breakfast nook where we'd eaten thousands of meals, birthdays, homework sessions, those terrible teenage arguments about curfew and grades, completely empty. Even the refrigerator was missing, leaving behind only a yellowed rectangle of linoleum and the ghost outline of where it used to stand. But it was the dining room that hit me hardest. The oak table where we'd celebrated every birthday, every holiday, every milestone gone. That table had seen my son blow out 30 birthday candles over the years. It had held report cards and college acceptance letters, and, later, the awkward conversations about his mother's diagnosis. The last meal we'd shared at that table was after Susan's funeral. Neither of us could eat much, just pushed food around our plates while grief sat between us like an unwelcome guest. That's when the fight started, about money, about the house, about things that seemed important then but felt stupid now. Where had it all gone? The furniture, the memories, the life we'd built inside these walls. More importantly, where was my son? George Morrison. I spun around at the sound of my name, the Louisville slugger nearly slipping from my grip. Betty Patterson was hurrying across her front lawn, her silver hair catching the late afternoon sun. But something was wrong with the picture. Betty, who'd lived next door for 27 years and never moved faster than a Sunday stroll, was practically running. Her face was flushed, and she kept glancing over her shoulder like she expected someone to follow her. "Betty," I called back, forcing what I hoped was a normal smile. "Good to see you. I was just—" "Oh, honey, no." She reached the property line, pressing her hand to her chest as she caught her breath. Her usually perfect appearance was disheveled, cardigan buttoned wrong, house slippers instead of her normal shoes. "George, you can't be here. Not now. Not like this." The blood in my veins turned ice cold. "What do you mean I can't be here? This is my house, Betty. I built it with my own hands. It was your house." Her voice dropped to a whisper, and she glanced around the empty street like she was afraid someone might be listening. "But George, things happened after you left. Things with your boy that you don't know about." "What kind of things?" The question came out sharper than I intended. Betty had been like a grandmother to my son, bringing over soup when he was sick, watching him when Susan and I needed a night out. If anyone knew what was going on, it would be her. She wrung her hands, and I noticed they were shaking. The people he got mixed up with, they weren't the kind of folks you'd want coming around a neighborhood like this. Expensive cars at all hours. Men in suits who didn't smile. And the way they looked at the rest of us. She shuddered. "Men in suits? Betty, what are you talking about?" I tried to tell him, George. I tried to warn him when it started getting bad. But he wouldn't listen. Said he was finally making real money. That he was going to show everyone, especially you, that he could be successful. My chest felt tight. "Show me what?" "That he didn't need your approval anymore. That he could make it big without following in your footsteps." Her eyes filled with tears. "But the money." "Oh, George, the money wasn't from any job. It was from those people. Those dangerous people." The world seemed to tilt sideways. My son, my boy who'd once cried over a broken bird's wing, who'd saved his allowance for months to buy Susan flowers when she was in the hospital, involved with criminals? "Where is he now, Betty?" My voice came out as a croak. She looked around again, then stepped closer, lowering her voice to barely above a whisper. "That's what I'm trying to tell you. 3 months ago, everything went wrong. The police came, then those men in the expensive suits, then moving trucks. Your boy, he disappeared in the middle of the night. Disappeared, gone, vanished, like he never existed." She grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "George, they cleared out everything. Every stick of furniture, every photo, every trace that your family ever lived in that house. And the worst part, I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Some of those men, they've been asking questions about you." "Questions about me?" My voice came out as a whisper. The Louisville Slugger felt heavy in my hands, like it was made of lead instead of ash wood. Betty's eyes darted to the empty house, then back to me. "George, sit down. Please. You're going to need to sit down for this." But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "Just tell me, Betty. Whatever it is, just tell me." She took a shaky breath, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself despite the Texas heat. "It wasn't just about the money from those dangerous people. Your boy, he had another plan. A bigger plan." "What kind of plan?" "The house, George. This house. He knew about Susan's life insurance policy, about your retirement fund, about everything you'd built over the years. And that girl he married, Veronica, she was in on it from the beginning." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Veronica, the pretty brunette with the sweet smile who'd charmed Susan during her final months. The one who'd been so attentive at the funeral, so concerned about our family's healing process. "And on what, Betty?" "They were waiting." Her voice cracked. "Waiting for the perfect moment to take it all. The house was already in his name from when Susan got sick, remember? You transferred the deed to avoid probate issues." I remembered. Susan's medical bills had been crushing us, and the lawyers said putting the house in our son's name would protect it from hospital liens. It was supposed to be temporary, a safety measure. But that's not the worst part, Betty continued, tears now streaming down her cheeks. 3 weeks before Susan passed, Veronica started asking her questions. About your investments, about where you kept important papers, about life insurance beneficiaries. The world spun around me. "What are you saying?" "She was pumping information from your dying wife, George." While Susan was barely conscious from the pain medication, that girl was sitting beside her bed, pretending to be family, and learning everything she needed to know to rob you blind. My legs gave out. I dropped onto the porch steps, the birthday gift rolling away from me across the wooden boards. 29 years of marriage, a lifetime of trust, and in the end, strangers had used my wife's kindness against us. The night Susan died, Betty whispered, I saw Veronica leaving your house at 2 in the morning with a box of papers. At the time, I thought she was just helping with funeral arrangements. But she wasn't. She was stealing your financial information. Bank statements, investment records, insurance policies. Everything they needed to disappear with your life savings. I stared at the empty house. My house. That wasn't my house anymore. How much? All of it, George. The retirement fund, Susan's life insurance, even the money from selling your construction equipment. They cleaned out every account while you were staying at your sister's place in Houston, trying to grieve. The betrayal cut deeper than losing Susan. At least death was honest. This was calculated, premeditated. My own son had used his mother's funeral as cover to destroy everything we'd built together. There's more, Betty said softly. I looked up at her, wondering how there could possibly be more. The dangerous people your boy got involved with? They weren't just business partners. They were the ones who helped him create new identities, new social security numbers, new lives in another state. You mean, your son is gone, George. Really gone. And according to legal records, you never existed as his father. The Louisville slugger lay beside me on the porch, Mickey Mantle's signature facing the sky. 30 years too late, and a lifetime of trust too short. I was still sitting on those porch steps, staring at the Louisville slugger, when the unmarked sedan pulled into my driveway. The engine's purr was too smooth, too official. Government issued. A woman in her 40s stepped out, badge already visible on her belt. Dark hair pulled back, sharp eyes that had seen too much, and the kind of tired walk that comes from years of delivering bad news to broken families. Mr. Morrison? I'm Detective Rivera with Travis County Sheriff's Department. She approached slowly, hands visible, the way cops do when they're not sure if you're a victim or a threat. Mrs. Patterson called us. Said you might be in immediate danger. Betty nodded from her yard, wrapping her cardigan tighter despite the heat. Danger? I stood up, my knees creaking like the old porch boards. Detective, I think there's been some kind of mistake. I'm afraid there hasn't been. She pulled out a manila folder, thick with documents. Mr. Morrison, we've been investigating your son and his associates for 8 months. Financial fraud, identity theft, and... She hesitated. Attempted homicide. The world tilted again. Attempted what? Your son and his wife took out 3 separate life insurance policies on you over the past 2 years. Total value, $1.2 million. She opened the folder, showing me photocopied forms with signatures I didn't remember making. We have recorded conversations of them discussing various methods to expedite the claims process. My mouth went dry. Methods? The morning you left for your sister's house in Houston, the day after the funeral, your daughter-in-law prepared your breakfast. Coffee and toast. Do you remember feeling unusually sick during that drive? I did remember. Nausea so bad I'd had to pull over twice. Dizziness that lasted for days. I'd blamed it on grief. We found ricin residue in your coffee mug, Detective Rivera continued. Not enough to kill you immediately, but enough to make you sick. Our theory is they were testing dosages, planning to perfect the method when you returned. Betty gasped from across the yard. Even she hadn't known this part. But I never came back, I whispered. Exactly. You stayed in Houston longer than they expected. Gave us time to build our case. She flipped through more pages. Bank records show they transferred your retirement funds to offshore accounts 3 days after your wife's funeral. The house sale was already in motion. I looked up at the empty windows of my home. They were going to kill me and sell my house. Your son's exact words, recorded on a wiretap. The old man's too stubborn to die naturally. We need to help him along. Detective Rivera's voice was steady, professional, but I could see the disgust in her eyes. Mr. Morrison, these people aren't just thieves. They're cold-blooded killers who used your grief as cover for murder. The Louisville slugger lay forgotten on the porch. A birthday gift for a son who tried to poison his own father. Detective Rivera's words echoed in my head as I stared at the empty house. But suddenly, I was remembering another day. 8 months ago, the day everything went wrong between us. We'd been standing in this same driveway after Susan's funeral, still wearing our black suits, the Texas heat making the fabric stick to our skin. The mourners had gone home. The casseroles were stacked in the refrigerator, and it was just my son and me, facing the terrible silence that comes after you bury the woman who held your family together. We need to talk about Mom's things, he'd said, not meeting my eyes. I'd nodded, thinking he meant her clothes, her jewelry, the small treasures she'd collected over the years. We can do that tomorrow, son. Today's been hard enough. No, Dad. We need to talk about it now. About the house, the insurance, everything. The way he'd said everything should have warned me. There was something cold in his voice, something that didn't match the grief I expected to see in his face. The lawyers already handled the important stuff, I'd told him. The house is in your name, like we planned. Once I get back from Houston, we can figure out the rest. That's what I wanted to discuss. He'd straightened his tie, a nervous habit from childhood that now seemed calculated. I think it would be better if you stayed in Houston. Permanently. The words hit me like a physical blow. What are you talking about? This house is too big for one person. Too many memories. You'd be happier starting fresh somewhere else. His voice had gotten stronger, more confident, like he'd rehearsed this speech. Veronica and I have been talking, and we think. Veronica and you? The anger had risen in my throat like bile. Your mother's been dead for 6 hours, and you're already making plans with that girl? Don't call her that girl. She's my wife. She's a stranger who showed up 2 years ago and suddenly knows what's best for our family. That's when his mask had slipped. Just for a second, I'd seen something ugly underneath the grief. Something selfish and impatient and cold. Our family. He'd laughed, but there was no humor in it. Dad, you've been checked out for years. Ever since Mom got sick, you've been useless. Veronica's the one who handled the medical bills, the insurance forms, all of it. Where were you? I was working, trying to pay for your mother's treatments. You were hiding. At job sites, at the hardware store, anywhere but here watching Mom die. The words had cut deep because they held a grain of truth. I had thrown myself into work during Susan's illness, not to avoid her, but because I couldn't bear to watch the cancer steal her away piece by piece. I loved your mother more than life itself, I'd whispered. Then you should have been here. Those were the last words we'd spoken. 8 months of silence that I'd blamed on pride and grief. Now I knew better. Detective Rivera was packing up her files when her radio crackled to life. The dispatcher's voice was urgent. All units, be advised. Suspects Brandon Crawford and Veronica Crawford were spotted at a gas station in Bastrop. They may be heading back to the Morrison property. The blood drained from my face. Crawford? That's not my son's name. It's one of his new identities, Rivera explained, already moving toward her car. Mr. Morrison, you need to come with me right now. If they're coming back, it's not for a reunion. But I couldn't move. Something was pulling me toward the empty house, toward the porch where I'd spent countless evenings watching my boy practice his pitching form in the backyard. Why would they come back here? Think about it. You're alive when you should be dead. You know about their crimes. And there's probably evidence still hidden in that house. Evidence that could put them away for life. She grabbed my arm. They're not coming to talk, Mr. Morrison. They're coming to finish what they started. I shook her off, walking toward the front door. Then let them come. George, Betty called from her yard. Don't be foolish. But I was already turning the spare key I'd hidden under the third porch board 20 years ago. The key they'd forgotten about because they'd never been the ones to lock up after family barbecues or late nights fixing broken faucets. The door swung open into darkness that smelled of pine sol and fresh paint. Someone had tried to erase every trace of our lives here, but you can't clean away memories. Not completely. I stepped inside, Detective Rivera right behind me, her hand resting on her service weapon. The hardwood floors creaked under our feet, the same boards I'd installed with my own hands, the same sounds I'd heard every morning for 23 years. We should wait for backup, Rivera whispered. No. I moved toward the kitchen, where pale rectangles on the wallpaper showed where Susan's family photos used to hang. This is my house. If they want me dead, they can face me here. That's when I heard it. The soft rumble of an engine turning into the driveway. Rivera drew her weapon, motioning for me to get behind the kitchen island. Mr. Morrison, I need you to stay down and stay quiet. Through the window, I could see headlights sweeping across the front yard. A black SUV with tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that screamed money and danger. It parked right where my pickup used to sit during all those years of normal life. The engine shut off. 2 doors slammed. Dad, a voice called from the darkness outside. The same voice that used to shout, "Watch this," before attempting impossible skateboard tricks. The same voice that had whispered, "I love you," every night when I tucked him into bed. Now it was the voice of someone who'd tried to poison me. I know you're in there, Dad. Your truck's parked down the street. We saw the detective's car too. His footsteps crunched on the gravel driveway. We just want to talk. Rivera looked at me, her eyes reflecting the dim light filtering through the windows. She mouthed the words, "He's lying." Another voice joined the first, female, sweet, familiar. "Veronica, Mr. Morrison, please. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. We can explain everything." The same voice that had sat beside Susan's deathbed, pumping her for financial information while my wife drifted in and out of morphine-induced sleep. The front door handle rattled. Then I heard the sound that made my blood freeze, the soft scraping of metal against metal. Lockpicks. They weren't here to talk. They were here to finish what they'd started 8 months ago. The lock-picking sound stopped. Silence stretched between us like a held breath. "They're waiting," Detective Rivera whispered, her weapon trained on the front door. "Probably listening to see if we'll make noise." I looked around the stripped kitchen, remembering where Susan used to keep important papers. Behind the coffee canister, tucked inside a recipe box that looked innocent but held our most precious documents. If they'd cleaned out everything else, maybe they'd missed that. The recipe box was gone, but something else caught my eye, a slight discoloration on the wall where our phone used to hang. I pressed against it, and the drywall gave way slightly. They'd patched a hole here, painted over it, but done a sloppy job. "What are you doing?" Rivera hissed. I pulled out my pocket knife and carefully scraped at the patch. The fresh paint flaked away, revealing a small cavity behind the drywall. My fingers found the edge of an envelope. Inside were photocopies, documents I'd never seen before. The first was a will, supposedly mine, leaving everything to my beloved son and completely disinheriting my sister in Houston. My signature at the bottom looked perfect, but I'd never signed it. "Jesus," Rivera breathed, looking over my shoulder. The second document made my hands shake. A life insurance application dated 3 months after Susan's diagnosis. $2 million in coverage, with my son as the sole beneficiary. Again, my forged signature, but this time I could see the subtle differences, the way the G in George slanted slightly wrong. But it was the third document that nearly stopped my heart. A detailed timeline, written in my son's handwriting. Phase 1, transfer house deed, completed. Phase 2. Secure life insurance policies, completed. Phase 3. Isolate target post-funeral, completed. Phase 4. Eliminate target via gradual poisoning, failed, need new approach. Phase 5. Stage accident after return from Houston. Phase 6. Collect inheritance and disappear. At the bottom, in Veronica's neat script, coffee method failed. Try food. Ricin works better in fatty substances. Test smaller doses first. They've been planning my murder like a grocery list. We need to get out of here, Rivera whispered. This is evidence of premeditated. A soft scraping sound came from the back door. They were trying multiple entry points. I stuffed the documents into my jacket and moved toward the dining room, where Susan's old china cabinet used to stand. The built-in shelves were empty, but I remembered a secret compartment my father had built when he helped us remodel. My fingers found the hidden latch. The panel swung open, revealing a small space that still held treasure. Susan's jewelry box and a manila folder thick with papers. Inside the folder were our real financial records, bank statements showing the systematic theft of our accounts, and something that made my blood boil. Printed emails between my son and Veronica discussing my unfortunate accident that would happen soon after his return. One email made my vision blur with rage. The old fool still thinks I love him. Sent me some pathetic birthday card talking about making things right. Perfect timing. He'll come back for reconciliation just as we finish preparations. The birthday card I'd mailed 3 weeks ago. The one that had given me hope we could heal our relationship. They'd laughed at it. Used it as confirmation I'd be an easy target. That's when I heard the kitchen faucet turn on. Rivera and I froze. Someone was inside the house. Dad, my son's voice came from the kitchen, artificially sweet. I made coffee. Your favorite, the dark roast Mom used to buy. Why don't you come join me? We really do need to talk. Rivera grabbed my arm, but I pulled away. Through the doorway, I could see 2 steaming mugs on the counter where our breakfast table used to sit. The coffee smelled exactly like it had that morning 8 months ago. The morning I'd driven away sick and dizzy, blaming grief for the nausea that nearly killed me. Just give me a minute. I called toward the kitchen, my voice surprisingly steady. I need to use the restroom first. Detective Rivera looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but I held up my cell phone and mouthed the word 911. She nodded, understanding immediately. Of course, Dad, came the reply from the kitchen. That same voice that used to ask for bedtime stories. Take your time. The coffee will stay warm. I walked down the hallway toward the guest bathroom, my footsteps echoing in the empty house. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like thunder, but I forced myself to move normally. 23 years of walking these floors. My muscle memory knew exactly which boards groaned and which ones stayed silent. The bathroom door closed with a soft click. I turned the lock and immediately dialed 911, keeping my voice to barely above a whisper. 911, what's your emergency? This is George Morrison at 847 Maple Street. Detective Rivera is here, Travis County Sheriff's Department. 2 armed suspects have entered my home. They've already attempted to poison me once. I need backup immediately. Sir, can you speak up? I'm having trouble hearing you. I can't speak louder, I hissed into the phone. They'll hear me. These people tried to kill me 8 months ago. They're here to finish the job. Units are being dispatched. Stay on the line. Are you in immediate danger? Through the thin bathroom door, I could hear movement in the kitchen. Footsteps. The scrape of a chair. Then my son's voice. Dad? Everything okay in there? Your coffee's getting cold. I'm fine. I called back, trying to sound natural. Just be another minute. To the 911 operator, I whispered. They have poisoned coffee waiting. Detective Rivera has her weapon drawn. How long for backup? 7 minutes out. Can you stay hidden until then? 7 minutes. It might as well have been 7 hours. Dad, you know what? I've been thinking about that fight we had after Mom's funeral. His voice was moving closer to the hallway. I said some terrible things. Things I didn't mean. My grip tightened on the phone. The manipulation was starting again, just like before. The false remorse, the crocodile tears. We both said things. I replied, stalling for time. Grief makes people say crazy stuff. Exactly. That's why Veronica and I came back. We want to make things right. Start over as a family. Veronica's voice joined his. We've missed you so much, Mr. Morrison. I know we got off on the wrong foot, but I truly loved your wife. She was like a mother to me. The same woman who'd pumped dying Susan for financial information. The same woman who'd written notes about rice and dosages in fatty substances. That means a lot to hear. I managed, watching the bathroom door handle. If it turned even slightly, I'd know they were trying to get in. Are you still there? The 911 operator whispered through my phone. Yes. They're trying to manipulate me into drinking poisoned coffee. Keep stalling. Units are 5 minutes out. A soft knock on the bathroom door made my heart skip. Dad, you've been in there a while. Are you feeling all right? The concern in his voice sounded so genuine. If I didn't know what I knew, I might have believed it was real worry from a loving son. Just thinking, I said, about your mom, about everything we lost when she died. I know, Dad. That's why we're here. To get back what we lost. What we lost, not who we lost. They were here to get back the money, the house, the inheritance they thought should be theirs. Dad, why don't you come out and we'll talk? Really talk this time. 5 minutes until backup arrived. 5 minutes to keep them believing I was just a grieving father ready to reconcile. 5 minutes to stay alive. The bathroom door handle turned. Dad, I'm coming in. We're worried about you. I ended the 911 call and slipped the phone into my pocket. 3 minutes until backup. 3 minutes to face the son who'd tried to murder me. The door opened slowly. There he stood, the boy I'd taught to throw a curveball, the teenager I'd cheered for at every football game, the young man I'd walked down the aisle at his wedding. Except now his eyes were cold, calculating. The mask was finally off. There you are, he said, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Come on, let's go have that coffee. I stepped out of the bathroom, and that's when I saw her. Veronica stood at the end of the hallway, no longer the sweet, grieving daughter-in-law who'd comforted us at Susan's funeral. Her hand was inside her purse, and I had a pretty good idea what she was holding. Actually, son, I think we need to talk right here. I stopped walking, crossing my arms. About phase 4 of your little plan. His face went white. What are you talking about? I pulled out the documents I'd found hidden in the wall. I'm talking about your murder timeline. Your notes about rice and dosages. Your emails laughing about the pathetic old fool who still thought you loved him. Veronica's hand tightened on her purse. Brandon, he knows. Brandon. Not the name I'd given him 30 years ago when I held him in the hospital, counting his tiny fingers and promising to protect him from everything bad in the world. You used your mother's death as cover to steal everything we'd built. I continued, my voice growing stronger. You sat beside her deathbed, pumping her for information while she was dying. You forged my will, took out life insurance policies, and planned my murder like you were planning a vacation. You don't understand, he said, but the pretense was crumbling. You never understood anything. I understand that you tried to poison me. I understand that you cleaned out our bank accounts while I was grieving your mother. I understand that you thought I was too weak and too stupid to figure it out. That's when his true nature finally emerged. The fake grief vanished, replaced by pure rage. Too weak? Dad, you've always been weak. Working construction your whole life. Never making real money. Never giving us the life we deserved. Mom died in a public hospital because you couldn't afford better care. Your mother died because she had cancer, not because you failed her. His voice cracked with fury. Veronica showed me what real success looked like. Real money. real power. We could have had everything if you just died quietly like you were supposed to. Like I was supposed to? The ricin should have worked. You should have had your little heart attack on the drive to Houston, and this would all be over. He stepped closer, his fists clenched. But you're too stubborn to die, aren't you? Just like you were too stubborn to give us what we needed when Mom was alive. Veronica pulled a small pistol from her purse. Brandon, enough talking. The neighbors will hear. That's when Detective Rivera appeared behind them, her weapon drawn. Travis County Sheriff's Department. Drop your weapon. Veronica spun around, but she wasn't fast enough. Rivera's training kicked in, and within seconds, the younger woman was face down on my hallway floor, handcuffed and cursing. Brandon looked around wildly, like a trapped animal. Dad, you don't understand. We can split the insurance money. Forget all this happened. I understand perfectly, son. I looked into his eyes one last time, searching for any trace of the boy I'd raised. There was nothing there but greed and desperation. I understand that you're not my son anymore. The sound of sirens filled the air. Squad cars pulled into the driveway, their red and blue lights painting the walls of my empty house. Officers poured through the front door, weapons drawn. Brandon Crawford, you're under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy, Detective Rivera announced, slapping handcuffs on the man who used to be my boy. As they dragged him away, he looked back at me one last time. You think you've won? You'll never get your money back. You'll never get your life back. I watched the police cars disappear into the Texas night, their taillights fading like dying stars. He was wrong about one thing, though. I'd already gotten my life back. 6 months later, I sat in the Travis County Courthouse, watching the man who used to be my son stand before the judge in an orange jumpsuit. His hands were cuffed behind his back, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw a flash of the scared little boy who used to run to me when thunderstorms shook the house. Then he turned to look at me, and that cold calculation was back in his eyes. Brandon Crawford, Judge Martinez said, her voice echoing in the packed courtroom. You have been found guilty of attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and identity theft. The court sentences you to 25 years in state prison without possibility of parole for 15 years. 25 years. He'd be 55 when he got out. If he got out. Older than I was when I'd built that house on Maple Street with my own hands, dreaming of the family we'd raised there. Veronica got 20 years. Her lawyer tried to argue she was manipulated by my son, but the jury heard those recorded phone calls. They heard her laugh about the old fool who'd be easy to eliminate. They saw her handwriting on those ricin dosage notes. As they led him away, Brandon looked back at me one final time. His mouth moved, and I could read his lips. I hate you. The words should have hurt, should have broken whatever piece of my heart still remembered tucking him into bed and reading him stories about brave knights and loyal sons. Instead, I felt something I hadn't expected, relief. The real tragedy wasn't that he'd tried to kill me. The real tragedy was that I'd spent 8 months blaming myself for our estrangement, carrying guilt about those harsh words after Susan's funeral, wondering if I'd failed him somehow. The truth was simpler and sadder. Some people are just born broken, and no amount of love can fix them. Detective Rivera found me in the courthouse parking lot afterward, keys to my truck heavy in my hand. How you holding up, Mr. Morrison? Better than I expected, I told her, and meant it. Got most of my money back thanks to you. What about the house? I looked out across the Austin skyline, thinking about that empty shell on Maple Street. Selling it. Too many ghosts. Where will you go? Houston. Near my sister. Start fresh. I paused. Maybe find someone to teach baseball to. There are a lot of kids who need a grandfather figure. Rivera smiled. Susan would like that. She would. Susan always said the best way to heal a broken heart was to help heal someone else's. 3 weeks later, I stood in the driveway of the Maple Street house one last time. Betty Patterson came over with a plate of her famous chocolate chip cookies, the same recipe she'd been making for 27 years. I'm going to miss having you as a neighbor, George. You saved my life, Betty. I won't forget that. The moving truck pulled away, carrying the few possessions I'd recovered and the memories I wanted to keep. The Louisville Slugger rode in the cab with me, not the one I'd brought as a birthday gift, but the original one from Christmas 1994. The police had found it in a storage unit, along with other family heirlooms Brandon hadn't been able to sell yet. As I drove away, I didn't look back. Some chapters of your life deserve to end with dignity, not desperation. But here's the thing about thinking your story is over. Life has a way of surprising you. 2 months after I'd settled into my new place in Houston, my mailbox held an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a deed transfer for a property I'd never heard of, signed by Susan 3 days before she died. Apparently, my wife had kept one secret from all of us. And just when I thought it was over, another mystery about our family was about to surface. But that's a story for another time. If you want to know what Susan was hiding and how it changed everything, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think about this story. I go through every single comments. The truth about family secrets? Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones with the biggest surprises.